I'd like to call to order the City Council meeting for the City of Highland Park, Illinois, May 27th, 2025. Will the clerk please call the roll?
Councilmember Center.
Present.
Councilmember Brockman.
Here.
Councilmember Ross.
Here.
Councilmember Tapia.
Present.
Councilmember Littler. Councilmember Bloomberg.
Here.
Mayor Rotering.
Here, we have a quorum. Everyone, please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. May I have a motion to approve the minutes of the regular City Council meeting held May 12th, 2025, and the minutes of the closed session of the regular City Council meeting held also on May 12th, 2025?
So moved. Second.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Those minutes are approved. May I have a motion to approve the warrant list?
Move to approve. Second.
Any comments or questions on the warrant list? Hearing none, will the clerk please call the vote?
Councilmember Center.
Aye.
Councilmember Brockman.
Aye.
Councilmember Ross.
Aye.
Councilmember Tapia.
Aye.
Councilmember Bloomberg.
Aye.
Mayor Rotering.
Aye. 6 ayes, no nays. The warrant list is approved. We'll now move to the report of the mayor. This past week, we were shocked and horrified by the senseless murder of a bright, promising young Jewish couple working at the Israeli embassy in Washington, D.C. Reporting indicates that Yaron Lishinsky and Sarah Milgram were targets of a politically motivated anti-Semitic violence, which must be and always shall be by this community unequivocally condemned and has no place in our nation. In 2024, the Anti-Defamation League reported the highest number of anti-Semitic incidents since data tracking began nearly 40 years ago. This is unacceptable. America's Jewish communities deserve to live free of fear. In line with our statement against hate, we denounce anti-Semitism and all forms of hate. We are grateful to the Highland Park Police Department for adding extra watches at places of worship, for continuing to work with regional, state, and federal law enforcement partners to keep our community safe. As we have at every City Council meeting since October 7th, 2023, when hundreds of Israeli civilians were targets of anti-Semitic violence, we continue to remember and keep in our hearts those who continue to be held hostage in Gaza. We stand in solidarity with their loved ones and calling for their immediate return. Continuing on with my report, appointments. The participation of the city's 18 advisory groups, boards, and commissions is a vital part of the City Council's deliberative policymaking process. City Council members serve as liaisons to those groups, attending meetings to listen and to understand firsthand feedback from community members and city staff who are working so thoughtfully on each group's work plan. So tonight I'm requesting council consensus on the liaison appointments that you all have been given. Do I have your consensus?
Yes.
I have. Wonderful. Thank you. I'm delighted to say that we have several proclamations this evening. We'll start with Pride Month. June is Pride Month. In line with our values statement, we stand in support of and in solidarity with our LGBTQ plus community members. We are proud to be an affirming and welcoming community that celebrates the full richness of who we are and who we love. My proclamation. Whereas the lesbian, gay, bisexual, transgender, queer, questioning, intersex, asexual, and aromantic LGBTQ plus communities of Highland Park are an integral part of the vibrant culture and climate of Highland Park. And whereas the diverse LGBTQ plus communities continue to contribute to the widespread academic, economic, artistic, and social spheres within and around our greater community. And whereas the month of June was designated Pride Month to commemorate the Stonewall riots, which occurred in June 1969, and are generally recognized as the catalyst of the LGBTQ plus rights movement. And whereas the City of Highland Park remains committed to protecting the civil rights of the LGBTQ plus communities as part of our unified effort to forge a more open and just society. And whereas one of the great things about Highland Park, Illinois is our capacity to live together and advance together across every conceivable difference. This June, we stand with the LGBTQ plus communities as they declare their pride in who they are and who they love. And whereas the LGBTQ plus communities still face an unacceptable level of discrimination and violence, we must remain vigilant and we must continue to make the case that each of us as human beings share a fundamental thing in common. All of us want to be loved and all of us want to love. We all deserve the chance to live our own individual lives free from prejudice and bias. Now, therefore, I, Nancy Rotary, Mayor of the City of Highland Park, County of Lakes, State of Illinois, do hereby proclaim June 2025 to be LGBTQ plus Pride Month, and we celebrate and support our LGBTQ plus community's rights to live their lives out loud during Pride Month and every month, as well as to continue to demand equal rights for all. And at this time, I'd like to invite Robin Bauer and Lourdes Gomez to accept the proclamation on behalf of Highwood Pride, although I call it Highland Park Highwood Pride because we will get there at some point. Thank you. Come on up. Thank you. Appreciate it. Thank you. And on the screen, you will see highlights of the upcoming Highland Park Highwood Pride events, including a Pride meetup on June 27th from 6 till 8 p.m. at Linfred Winery in Highland Park. I attended last year and had a great time and fun conversations, great food, great wine. We encourage everyone to show up and show support for these wonderful activities. Also, with data from the FBI indicating that 2023, the most recent year for which reporting is available, we saw a 23% increase in attacks based on sexual orientation and a 16% increase in attacks based on gender identity. Visible support for our LGBTQ plus communities and neighbors is greatly welcome. So beginning this weekend, please stop by the Pocket Park at St. John's and Central and pick up a pride flag to display on your lawn or in your office or wherever you'd like to display it. So thank you for joining us. Much appreciated. Absolutely. June is also Immigrant Heritage Month, an opportunity to celebrate the leadership, accomplishments, and contributions of immigrants and their children to our community and nation. We also celebrate those who work to advocate for immigrant families, ensuring that immigrants are fully welcomed, celebrated, and valued in our communities. I have a proclamation. Whereas generations of immigrants from every corner of the globe have built our country's economy and created the unique character of our nation, and whereas nearly all of us can trace our heritage to another nation, and we must never forget where we came from and why our ancestors came here, and whereas immigrants continue to grow businesses, offer innovative ideas, strengthen our economy, and create jobs in Illinois and throughout our nation, and whereas immigrants have provided Highland Park with unique social and cultural influence, fundamentally enriching the extraordinary character of our hometown. And whereas immigrants have been tireless leaders, not only in securing their own rights and access to equal opportunity, but also have campaigned to create a fairer and more just society for all Americans. And whereas despite these countless contributions, the role of immigrants in building and enriching our nation has frequently been overlooked and undervalued throughout our history and continuing to the present day. Therefore, I, Nancy Rotary, Mayor of the City of Highland Park, and the City Council of the City of Highland Park, do hereby designate June 2025 as Immigrant Heritage Month, and encourage all residents and local businesses to recognize and appreciate the stories of immigrants and their contributions to our community. And so I just want to say, as a welcoming community, it's more important than ever to show support for our immigrant neighbors and their contributions to our community, from sharing their languages, cuisines, cultures, to starting successful businesses, creating art, and more. Esteban, are you here? Esteban? Hi. North Suburban Legal Aid Clinic Supervising Attorney Esteban Carvajal is coming to share some comments. Thank you so much. Great, thank you.
Thank you, Mayor Rotering and council members, for recognizing Immigrant Heritage Month here in Highland Park. Your proclamation not only honors the invaluable contributions immigrants have made to this city, but also reinforces our shared commitment to dignity, inclusivity, and community. Nearly every family has an immigration story, whether recent or generations old. At North Suburban Legal Aid Clinic, these stories are woven into the work that we do every day. They are reflected in the lives of our clients, our staff, our board, our volunteers, and the community partners who make our work possible. We know that these stories do not always come easy. In today's climate, many immigrants face uncertainty, fear, and complex legal hurdles. North Suburban Legal Aid Clinic is proud to provide free, accessible legal services to qualifying individuals in Highland Park, Lake County, and North Suburban Cook County. This includes assistance with DACA renewals, asylum, deportation defense, and family-based immigration. This Immigrant Heritage Month, we are once again sharing photos, recipes, and stories that reflect the richness of our immigrant community, from cherished family traditions to the resilience of those building new lives here. You can find these on our website and social media. We also invite community members to share their own stories with us, not only to preserve heritage, but to remind us all that immigrants continue to shape the future of our communities. If you or someone you know needs immigration legal assistance, please visit www.nslegalaid.org. The North Suburban Legal Aid Clinic is here to help. Thank you again for your recognition, your ongoing support of our work and our neighbors.
Absolutely. And congratulations on celebrating 10 years of service to the community. We're deeply grateful to all that you bring every day. Thank you. On Friday, June 6th, we will mark National Gun Violence Awareness Day and the start of Wear Orange Weekend. Highland Park has long supported this annual call to action in memory of high schooler Hadia Pendleton, who was shot and killed on a playground in Chicago in 2013. 3 years ago, we experienced firsthand the trauma that gun violence wreaks on individuals, families, and communities. There have been 141 mass shootings in 2025 alone, and firearms continue to be the leading cause of death of American children and teens, according to the analysis of CDC data. During Gun Violence Prevention Month and always, we continue to advocate for national policy measures to end the cycle of gun violence. This is not the proclamation for that. It looks like we don't have it up here. Hang on one second. Let me pull it down. All right. Whereas every day, 125 Americans are killed by gun violence and more than 260 are shot and wounded, countless survivors of gun violence will carry the trauma for the rest of their lives. And whereas June 2nd, 2025 would have been the 28th birthday of Hadia Pendleton, a teenager who marched in President Obama's second inaugural parade and was tragically shot and killed just weeks later. And whereas to honor Hadia and the Americans whose lives were cut short and the countless survivors who are injured by shootings every day, a national coalition of organizations designated June 2nd as National Gun Violence Awareness Day. As the gun violence crisis grows, a single day is not enough. And whereas over a decade ago, a group of Hadia's friends asked their classmates to honor her life by wearing orange. The color was selected because hunters wear orange to announce themselves to other hunters when out in the woods, and orange is a color that symbolizes the value of human life. And whereas by wearing orange on June 6th, the first Friday of the month, we will raise awareness about gun violence and honor the lives and the lost human potential of Americans stolen by gun violence. And whereas we support the Lake County State's Attorney's Office and their gun violence prevention initiative, which offers public education about firearm safe storage and firearm restraining orders. And whereas we renew our commitment to reduce gun violence and pledge to do all we can to keep firearms out of the wrong hands and encourage responsible gun ownership to help keep our children safe. Now, therefore, I, Nancy Rotary, Mayor of the City of Highland Park, and the City Council do hereby proclaim June 2025 Gun Violence Awareness Month in Highland Park, and urge all of our residents and everyone who agrees that we can do more to save human lives and American lives from gun violence and support efforts to prevent tragic effects of gun violence and to honor and to value human lives. We are honored we will present this proclamation to you, Eric, when it's printed out, but wanted to have you come join us through the Lake County Gun Violence Prevention Initiative. The state's attorney's office aims to interrupt cycles of gun violence by implementing trauma-informed programs and fostering collaborative efforts throughout Lake County that address the root causes of gun violence. And I now invite Lake County State's Attorney Reinhardt to the podium. Thank you.
I just want to thank the City Council and the Mayor for their leadership in this. I want to acknowledge my friend, Highland Park City Police Chief Lou Jogman, who has also been crucial in our efforts across all of Lake County to end gun violence. On behalf of the State's Attorney's Office and the men and women who work there, we renew our pledge to each and every one of you to make Lake County safer from gun violence and from all forms of violence, whether it is the horrific mass calculated attack that we saw on July 4th, 2022, whether it is in the space of a domestic violence victim who is killed by his or her abuser, whether it is in an anti-Semitic attack or an anti-immigrant attack or any type of community violence that we see throughout all of Lake County and frankly throughout all of the country. All of these forms of gun violence can be prevented. They can be prevented. They are prevented every day in the cities of America and the towns of America through thoughtful, intelligent, and innovative efforts. Efforts by regular residents, efforts by regular people, evidenced by our heroes in law enforcement, efforts by mental health counselors, efforts by teachers, efforts by prosecutors, efforts by victim counselors. Every single one of the people, and many more, are the type of people who do prevent gun violence. And I say that because I believe that the project is just that big. And I think each and every one of us can do something to learn about what we can do locally. And as long as I am state's attorney, we will talk about prevention. There is no better way to be hard on crime than to prevent it in the first place. When I think about my family, who let's say lives downstate, I hope there are leaders down there when my parents live who talk about prevention, because I would rather that we prevented a crime than we simply engaged in platitudes after the fact. And Highland Park has never done that. The mayor has always said that there are ways to prevent gun violence. She was a leader when it came to banning assault weapons, and I am proud to stand in a place where there has been a commitment to banning weapons and to think rationally about how we can make our families safer. So on behalf of the State's Attorney's Office, I want to thank everyone for their efforts, and I encourage everyone to learn more about what you can do to prevent gun violence, and I look forward to continuing the mission. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, State's Attorney Reinhardt. We also would like to recognize June 4th as Safe Gun Storage Day. According to Every Town for Gun Safety, 4.6 million American children live in homes with guns that are both loaded and unlocked, increasing the risk of death or injury to children who are able to access these weapons. Safely storing unloaded firearms in locked safes separate from ammunition is absolutely critical to limiting the risks of unintentional death, injury, or damage. Additionally, June 21st marks National Ask Day, an initiative of the Brady campaign to end gun violence. Given the number of cases in which a child gains access to an unsecured weapon at a family member or friend's home, Ask Day encourages parents to ask whether or how firearms are secured before their child visits. These simple practices keep children in our community safe from accidental gun violence and help prevent suicides and gun theft. We'd now like to recognize Highland Park resident and advocate for safe gun storage, Ashby Beasley. Ashby is with us this evening and is welcome to share a few words.
Thank you, Mayor and City Council, for not only acknowledging this important community matter, but for listening and responding with action. There's no question that securely storing firearms saves lives. Shootings, unintentional shootings, and suicides. Secure firearm storage could definitely have prevented the theft of more than 1 million firearms that were stolen from cars from 2017 to 2021. But what if you don't own a gun? You might think the discussion about secure firearm storage isn't for you. But as a parent, one of the most important questions you can ask anytime you drop your child off is, do you have firearms and how are they stored? Weave it into the conversation after making sure the other parent knows about your child's allergies. Blame it on curiosity. My son is very curious, and so I have to ask if there are any unlocked firearms in the home. It is such a simple question.
You do not do that, Mom.
It is such a simple question, and I'm not being dramatic when I say it could save your child's life. So please join us on June 4th to continue this important conversation to keep our kids and communities safe. I'm so grateful to the state's attorney's office who are planning an event. And if you ever, any parent, if you ever need advice on how to ask this question, just DM me, send me a message. Come by my house if you need firearm locks. I have locks in my house, like 2 huge boxes. So that's how we can keep our kids safe, is just continuing to have this conversation with each other. Thank you.
I can tell the address.
Thank you. Thank you for your advocacy. We also want to recognize Susan Mason and Maria Peterson and Larry Mason representing Moms Demand Action. Moms Demand Action is a grassroots movement working diligently for public safety measures that can protect people from gun violence. Gun violence is preventable, and we appreciate their work and commitment to doing what it takes to keep families safe. Did you have comments you wanted to? Always, always. Thank you. Thank you all for joining us. But wait, there's more. May is also Building Safety Month, which recognizes that our public safety and quality of life depend on the safety of our homes, buildings, infrastructure, and other structures. We're delighted to honor the outstanding city professionals who work together to ensure the safety, sustainability, and resilience of our infrastructure. Whereas the City of Highland Park is committed to recognizing the essential role of the built environment, our homes, our offices, our institutional buildings, and other structures play in everyday life and when disasters strike. And whereas our confidence in the resilience of our built environment that make up our community is achieved through the devotion of vigilant professionals, building safety and fire prevention officials, architects, engineers, builders, tradespeople, design professionals, laborers, plumbers, and others in the construction industry who work year-round to ensure the safe construction of buildings. And whereas dedicated members of the International Code Council, a nonprofit that brings together local, state, territorial, tribal, and federal officials who are experts in the built environment to create and implement the highest quality codes to protect us in the buildings where we live, learn, work, and play. And whereas modern building codes, such as those adopted by the City of Highland Park, include safeguards to protect the public from building safety hazards, including hurricanes, snowstorms, tornadoes, fires, floods, and earthquakes. And whereas Building Safety Month reminds the public about the critical role these professionals play in ensuring the safety of all buildings and structures is essential to our prosperity. And whereas Game On, the International Code Council's theme for Building Safety Month 2025, encourages all of us to raise awareness about building safety on a personal, local, and global scale. And whereas each year, in observance of Building Safety Month, people all over the world commit to improve building safety, resilience, energy efficiency, and economic investment at home and in the community, and to acknowledge the essential service provided to all of us by local and state building departments, fire prevention bureaus, and federal agencies in protecting lives and property. Now, therefore, I, Nancy Rotering, Mayor of the City of Highland Park, and the City Council of Highland Park, do hereby designate June 2025 as Building Safety Month. Thank you. Many thanks to the dedicated team in the Community Development Department, especially Director Joel Fontaine, Deputy Director Charmaine Lader, Building Division Manager Archana Mohan Chandra, and all of the staff who support the continued growth of our community through careful review, maintenance, and application of our code. Thank you again for your oversight, Director Fontaine. Okay. We have more fun things to talk about. It's our pleasure to welcome Dr. Mark Nolan Hill to provide an update from the Great Lakes and St. Lawrence Cities Initiative. The initiative is a binational coalition of mayors from communities in the United States and Canada that rely on water from the Great Lakes, working together to advance the protection and restoration of the Great Lakes ecosystem through development and implementation of a comprehensive Great Lakes Protection and Restoration Plan. Goals of the initiative include strengthening coastal resiliency given the impacts of climate change, advancing water equity, and leveraging economic benefits of freshwater resources. Delighted to welcome you back, Dr. Hill. We'd like to hear more about this important work.
Thank you, Mayor, and thank you, Council. I am Dr. Mark Nolan Hill, and this is the 22nd year I am presenting a summary of the annual Great Lakes St. Lawrence Cities Initiative meeting, which was held in Milwaukee. And as the mayor stated, the Great Lakes and St. Lawrence Cities Initiative is a bi-national consortium of over 325 municipal and regional United States and Canadian mayors and representatives, including First Nations and tribal leaders, to advance the protection and restoration of the Great Lakes and St. Lawrence River Basin. This was founded in 2003 by Mayor Rich Daley and His Worship David Miller of Toronto. 22 years ago, Highland Park Mayor Mike Belsky appointed me to represent Highland Park as I was on the Lakefront Commission dealing with ravines, erosions, bluffs for 35 years, and I am not compensated in any way. This organization has grown from less than 100 members to its current greater than 325 members, and this was the largest meeting in its history. Of interest is the fact that I'm the only person in the organization that has been at every meeting since 2003, as everyone else is present via elections and changes in administration, and this has allowed me great continuity. The basis of this organization is the quote from Mayor Daley, where in 2003 at our first meeting stated, "If you want something done, ask a mayor," and I'm sure Mayor Roderian can appreciate that. The topic of this year's meeting in Milwaukee was the future of fresh water. Remembering 21% of the fresh water on Earth is in the Great Lakes, and 60% of the current global GDP is the economic value of the Great Lakes. The issues revolve around technology, contaminants, workforce shortage, aging infrastructure, affordability, to name but a few. Some of the many technological advances presented were machines that draw water out of the lakes to remove algae and toxins and algal blooms. Self-serve boat cleaning washing stations to decrease aquatic invasive species. I'm not a sailor, even though I was in the Navy, but I didn't realize that boats are the main transmitters of aquatic invasive species. The ability to assess water pipes externally rather than have to take them apart internally to assess them. And finally, placing a flex liner installation in maintenance holes and manhole covers to prevent corrosions infiltrating groundwater into sanitary systems. Some of the many legislative issues presented included John Altenberg, our president, with Governor Whitmer of Michigan and Governor Pritzker of Illinois, met in March with the president at the White House to discuss the Asian carp problem. And some of the many policies presented included the United States and Canada signed a declaration preserving the United States and Canadian relationship to protect our prosperous regional economy and precious freshwater resources. Madeleine Figure, the Consulate General of Canada in Chicago, stated, "It's a complicated time for the United States and Canada relationships." Also discussed were public and private collaborations. And finally, it was emphasized the importance of community and environmental stewardship. And they said that the biggest barrier was status quo inertia. And I've never heard that expression. A few pictures. You're very good, thank you very much. You did, great. Up there, that's Mayor Cavalier Johnson. Our mayor in Chicago is Johnson. He's the mayor of Milwaukee, and he was the host. And then going to the right, a little more, one more, please, and that's our president, John Altenberg. And then go to the left, there you go. And that is Mayor Gino Moretti, who was the chairman this year, and he is of the St. Antoinette, Quebec City mayor. Going way to the right is someone that mayor knows and council knows, Mayor John Dickert, who was the president of the organization some years ago. Next slide, please. Oh, it's me, I'm sorry, please excuse me. That's Mayor Vandenstein, Mike Vandenstein of Sheboygan, who was also the president of the organization. Going to the next one, that is Reeve Bert Liverance, and he is from the town of Archipelago, Ontario, and he spoke very well. And the reason in Canada, mayors are not always called mayors. They're called either His Worship or Reeve, and that's his title, Reeve, and that's an Old English term that means sheriff. Going to all the way to the right, that's Governor Tony Evers, who spoke. Going to the bottom left, one of my favorite people, that's Ambassador Tom Barrett, who was the ambassador to Luxembourg, and he was the mayor of Milwaukee for more terms than anyone in the United States have ever been as mayor. And then going way to the right, you may recognize that gentleman, that's Dave Nafsker, who used to be on the council here, and he works with the organization. I always have to put this up because I never pronounce her name. This is from the First Nations. This is Grand Council Chief Linda de Bessegie, and you can read it, okay? And she gave just a great talk, just a wonderful talk. Up on the left is the declaration that is signed that Mayor Johnson is holding between the United States and Canada. And then finally, they had great award ceremonies, and I was honored to be able to sit next to the ambassador and Mike Vanderson. And is there one more slide? I think there's one. No? Well, then I just have an epilogue. Several people have asked me what happened in Milwaukee. And you may have heard about it in the news, so I tell you because people ask me. There were over 200 mayors there. And when Mayor Johnson of Milwaukee was leaving the hotel to go back to City Hall, which was about 2 blocks away, there was a shooting in City Hall. And luckily, what I want to tell you is no one got hurt and everyone was safe. Everything was locked down, but we just couldn't believe that it happened. And then finally, I have a gift for you, Mayor and Council, and from the Great Lakes St. Lawrence Initiatives. These are pencils, which at the distal end of the pencil are seeds for either daisies or basil. And what you do is you put this in a pot of soil, and after a day or so, the seeds go into the soil. Then you can take out the pencil and use it. And supposedly in a few weeks, you will see sprouts. Now, Carol Sue, my wife, did this already. We haven't seen sprouts. But
We're willing to try.
thank you, Mayor. Mayor, may I approach and hand this to
Absolutely.
you? Oh,
Thank you.
Thank
Much
you very
appreciated.
much.
Thank you for your report. Thank you. I'll share these with my colleagues. Thank you. There you go. There you go. Thank you. Wonderful. Thank you. Thank you, Dr. Hill. For more than 20 years, Cancer Survivor Beauty and Support Day has encouraged those in the beauty and wellness industry to support cancer survivors to provide complimentary services to cancer survivors on the first Tuesday in June. Highland Park resident Barbara Padgett created this annual national event to bring joy to cancer survivors of all genders, ages, and types of cancer. Barbara's leadership in this area has provided countless cancer survivors with affirming and supportive experiences. Barbara, I'd like to invite you to the podium to share more about this incredible program and explain how to locate participating salons and businesses. Thank you for joining us this evening.
The years go by very quickly.
They do.
And I feel very honored to be speaking here again. And I'm very honored to be speaking among so many proclamations that you made. Each and every one is so important for Highland Park. Cancer Survivor Beauty and Support Day is an international event that started right here in Highland Park in one spa. In fact, the woman who had the spa retired last year after 40 years. We do have some new places this year. This is a day, the first Tuesday in June, when men, women, and children cancer survivors can receive a complimentary service from thousands of places, lots of places here in Highland Park, but thousands across the country, thanks to Carol Wolf, our sister cities in Porta Vallarta and in Italy take part. And thanks to Great Clips, Canada is also involved. A great thank you really goes to all the volunteers who donate their services. This is not a charity. I do no fundraising, and they are asked to do no fundraising as well. It is simply a day of support. I am pleased to say that this year I have the support of the National Council of Cancer Survivorship, and they are trying to help me get this to Washington. As I have been doing this for over 20 years, I am also over 20 years older, and I am very concerned what will happen when I can no longer do this because I do it myself. I have a wonderful secretary that mans the website, but I'm the one that handles the thousands of calls. I have a wonderful relationship with thousands of people across the country. But I am concerned because I know how much this means to the cancer survivors and actually to the volunteers as well. So I am hoping to get to Washington, to the Cancer Caucus, any help that anyone here can give me. It has been recommended that I reach out to United States Congressman Brian Fitzpatrick. I haven't had a real lot of luck. I kind of need a little better support on that, but I'm not going to stop because I don't want this to stop. And everybody remember that the real beauty of the day is the support that it gives to those in need. And I thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Barbara. And I believe it's all 50 states and all over the place, so really a labor of love and greatly appreciated. For the 31st consecutive year, the Government Finance Officers Association, the GFOA, has recognized the City of Highland Park with the Distinguished Budget Presentation Award. This award reflects the city's commitment to maintaining the highest standards of governmental budgeting. The GFOA holistically assesses an entity's annual budget document, evaluating how well it serves the community as a policy document, a financial plan, an operations guide, and a communications device. GFOA recognizes the city's commitment to providing its residents with clear and transparent policy planning and budgeting through this clear, comprehensive, and believe it or not, engaging document. And I'm not kidding, it is a great read. In particular, I'd like to recognize City Manager Gita Newkirk, Finance Director Christy McCalloo, the Finance Department team, and all department directors for this outstanding achievement. I encourage everyone to visit cityhpil.com/budget to view the budget document. It is really tremendous. So congratulations and thank you. With that, I'm asking, is there any business from the council? No. Okay. City Manager Newkirk, can you please provide the staff report?
Yes, thank you, Mayor. There are 9 items on the omnibus agenda for consideration. We are recommending, based on feedback from the council, pulling item number 6. This is a zoning ordinance pertaining to bicycle paths and parking. This report is part of our implementation of Move HP, which was approved in October 2020. The report was also presented for consideration by the PDC as well as Transportation Advisory Group. Director Fontaine has a presentation, which he will show with your permission after that item is pulled. And then we are recommending that we postpone item number 8. This is the resolution approving the city's 2025 affordable housing plan. There is a public hearing component that was approved after our last plan was submitted to the state, and so we will post for a public hearing, hold that hearing at the next city council meeting, and then have the plan on the agenda for formal consideration at that time. And then also, Aaron, if we could just go to the next slide, wanted to share with the public information that we posted on the e-news last week. So just a reminder of some emergency communication recommendations to the public. So we have a number of different modalities that we use in the event of an emergency. We are asking the public to sign up for 2 important modalities. The first one is Rave Alert. So this system will be used in the event that we need to communicate major police activity that might affect the public. major road closures, again, because that impacts the public, or significant utility work. And so individuals can text HP alerts to that number that's on there, and then our communication manager, Amanda Bennett, put together a great Q&A, which is located on our website. You can see the information that's listed on that slide to access that Q&A for additional information. And then also just a reminder about Smart 911. So this is a national platform, so regardless of where anyone is, they have access to use the Smart 911. So you can sign up through the mobile app or sign up on the website that's listed right at the top of the screen. And this information allows users to enter as much information as they want about their family, emergency contacts, pets in the home, health conditions, anything that they want to share. And if they call 911, first responders have that information. So it allows us to be even more prepared to provide responsive, swift assistance to anyone in time of need. This platform also allows us to push information out. So if people provide their cell phone numbers, we can push information out in the event of an emergency. And again, this is another platform that's used to communicate information that may have a public impact. So these are just two modes of communication that we use, but we are asking the public to sign up. Smart 911 does require individuals to update their information every 6 months. So we'll continue to remind the public of that fact as well. And that concludes our staff reports.
Great, thank you. And I can say, like being elsewhere in the country, when something's happened, Smart 911 has alerted us on our phones. It's kind of wild, so.
Yeah.
Thank you. Yeah, great. Okay, with that, Assistant to the City Manager, Palbitska, would you please introduce the next item on our agenda, business from the public?
Thank you, Mayor. The next item on the agenda is business from the public. This is an opportunity for members of the public to address the City Council on a topic that is within the City Council's purview and jurisdiction, but is not listed in another location on the agenda. If you would like to speak about a matter that is listed on the agenda, we ask that you wait until that agenda item is called, and we will give you an opportunity to speak then. If your matter is on the omnibus consent agenda, please let us know if you would like us to remove that matter from the consolidated list so that you can speak about it. Please be aware that business from the public is not intended to be a forum for open dialogue or engagement with members of the City Council. Rather, it is intended as an opportunity to make comments to the City Council. Please do not expect a response from anyone tonight. If appropriate, questions may be directed to the city manager or other city staff. All comments should be directed to the City Council. All speakers will be limited to 3 minutes. We request that speakers refrain from throwing objects or using noisemakers, and that the public not applaud or make other comments after any speaker. We ask that everyone be respectful, civil, and non-repetitive.
Great, thank you. Good evening. Please state your name for the record.
My name is Carl Lambrecht. I live in Highland Park. I have a comment about taxes. I brought it up some time ago, and the mayor recognized the problem immediately. And yesterday, at the memorial program in high school auditorium, the naval commander indicated there are about 200 families living in the Highland Park area, military families. If they're all in the military housing, that means about $2 million a year in taxes. I base that on $10,000 on a house. And some houses have cost more in taxes, some houses less. But I gave that arbitrary number. If you take that further, $2 million a year, and make it 10 years, that's $20 million. That's a lot of money. It can reduce taxes for other people, have projects that you want to do quicker and sooner, but they should pay their fair share. And I suggest Brad Schneider, like Mark Kirk, could implement this and get it going. Then Durbin or Tammy Duckworth can help from the Senate side. That's my comment for today. Thank you.
Thank you. And as we've discussed in the past, we have pursued lobbying with our representatives in Washington, D.C., sadly and frustratingly to no avail, but we will continue
Well,
to
we got
pursue
to
it.
use them. They have to be reasonable to us. Thank you.
Absolutely, thank you. Any other members of the public wishing to be heard this evening? Hearing none, we'll continue on with our scheduled business. Items 1 through 5, 7, and 9 have been grouped together for omnibus consideration. Can I have a motion to approve items 1 through 5, 7, and 9?
So moved.
Second.
Any comments or questions on 1 through 5, 7, or 9? Any from the public? Hearing none, will the clerk please call the vote?
Councilmember Center?
Aye.
Councilmember Brockman?
Aye.
Councilmember Ross?
Aye.
Councilmember Tapia?
Aye.
Councilmember Bloomberg?
Aye.
Mayor Rotering?
Aye, 6 ayes, no nays. Items 1 through 5, 7, and 9 have been approved. Item 6 is an ordinance amending the City of Highland Park zoning ordinance of 1997 as amended regarding bicycle paths and parking. There's been a lot of questions and a lot of concern. I do want us to proceed with this conversation this evening. Joel, are you presenting, or how would you like to proceed in terms of providing the necessary background? All of us have read the packet as provided on the agenda that's been posted online since Thursday, but didn't know, folks, if you wanted a presentation or just want to ask questions.
Mayor, based on the number of conversations I've had one-on-one with officials, if we could have Director Fontaine give the presentation, and that
That'd be
way
great.
make sure everyone has the same information, and then we
Okay.
defer to you.
And from my understanding, basically, there are 4 questions that are being asked this evening.
Okay, I'll try to answer all of them. This is a item for an ordinance amending the City of Highland Park zoning code regarding bike paths and parking requirements. Staff recommend adoption of the ordinance amending the zoning code to establish essentially bike parking requirements for new and commercial multifamily developments, internal parking lot pedestrian path requirements for parking lots, and requirements for new commercial and multifamily and planned developments to provide connections to adjacent existing or planned trails. This proposed amendment also simplifies requirements related to vehicle parking reductions for bicycle parking. Okay, as part of the process to consider and develop these amendments, staff went to the Transportation Advisory Group meeting in September of last year and received feedback. Questions included where did bike parking rates come from, verifying whether dimensions for bicycle parking conflict with past approvals. There are several more, but I will go through these 2 first. So where did the bicycle parking rates come from? City staff informed by a combination of municipal code research and survey provided by the Northwest Municipal Conference. So these aren't just a copy of some other municipality's code. They are informed by other codes, but are our own recommendation. And TAG, the Transportation Advisory Group, asked about whether the dimensions for bike parking conflict with past approvals. Recently approved planned developments provided bicycle parking that was not in conformance with this proposed amendment in all aspects. TAG also asked a question about, put forth the feedback of, hey, let's require at least 1 bicycle space per residential unit. The ordinance provides 1 for every 3 dwelling units. That's the proposal. Concerns about proposed bike parking, off-street parking space offset, indicating that somewhere between 6 to 9 bike parking space for 1 off-street parking space is made more sense. Some research was done on that. Staff concurred, and we addressed it and said that the number would be 8. Somewhere between 6 and 9 was suggested. We chose 8. Okay, the Plan and Design Commission considered this item as well, of course, with the benefit of feedback from TAG, and voted 6-0 to recommend approve and incorporated TAG's recommendations with the exception of that 1-to-1. The comments and concerns from the Plan and Design Commission included whether providing bike parking would reduce the need for on-site vehicle parking for residential uses. So one of the things that this amendment package does, is it provides for a by right option for 1 space to be converted into bicycle parking. And for essentially, if you're providing bike parking, you have a reduction in your vehicle parking requirements. Now, the commission did talk about that. It didn't prevent them from recommending approval, but there was questions about that. I don't think that the ratio, I don't think that the number of spaces related to bike parking will interfere in any significant way with the provision of off-street parking. And so why are we having this kind of interchange? Because we know that land is precious and there's only so much land. And so you have a lot of things to fit in. And so instead of saying to someone, well, provide the bike parking, but then you're going to have to get a variance for 2 parking spaces, let's say. We said, okay, if the bike parking meets the requirements of the code, that you could do that and not have to apply for a variance. Thus recognizing that bike parking does take up space on site and acknowledging from a regulatory standpoint the exchange, and it's okay. That's what's proposed. Concerns about bicycle parking mainly as recreation and exercise, not commuting. This was another topic of conversation at the Plan and Design Commission. Staff noted that, but our plan, Move HP, did call for, and that was an adopted plan by council in October 2020, did call for developing these code amendments for consideration to provide for bike parking. And so that is noted, that some commissioners felt that way. And so I guess to some degree that was stated in the sense of we shouldn't relieve too much parking for bicycle parking, but rather recognize that there is a need, but really it's more of a recreational and exercise need, not a commuting need. That was the opinion of some members of the commission, not the commission as a whole. There were also questions about landscaping requirements for path connections and concerns that more landscaping requirements will involve taking more land from development. That's a real concern, and as are all of our landscaping requirements. We have landscaping requirements around parking lots that are currently in place. We do also have internal landscaping islands with trees that are requirements that I will say that latter one does receive a number of requests for relief. Okay, so one of the things that's proposed by this ordinance is to define long-term bike parking. Now, we kind of already did this in our code and it's already existing, but it was inartfully included in a different part of the code, and it made more sense to have this definition included in the definition section. So we repurposed some existing provisions that define long-term parking, what long-term bike parking is, and we added a provision, and that provision is that the long-term bike parking that's provided must be within 100 feet of the principal entrance of the building it serves, unless this long-term bicycle parking is located within a secure room designated for the storage of bicycles. The idea behind this is that it should be accessible to folks relatively easily, similar to car parking, with the incentive, if you will, to include it in the building, and meaning if it's in the building, this does not apply. It is by definition then within that compliance with this added provision for what long-term bike parking is. In terms of bike parking requirements, we have 2 broad categories: multifamily land uses and commercial land uses. So for long-term bicycle parking, 1 per 3 units, 1 space per 3 dwelling units with a minimum of 5 spaces is required. A bicycle parking space itself takes up about 2 by 6, about 12 square feet, with including internal circulation and other things needed to get things out of bicycle parking areas and such. You're talking about probably about 20 square feet or so. So that gives you kind of an idea. So what does that mean? Well, looking at a building like the size of the Albion 161 units, there'd be about 53 spaces of bike parking required, which in total is about 1,000, let's call it 1,100, 1,200 square feet, which is about the size of a 2-bedroom unit within a 161 unit development. Short-term bicycle parking, 1 space per 40 vehicle spaces, minimum of 5 spaces. For reference, I believe the Albion had about 191 parking spaces total. So it gives you kind of a sense of how many parking spaces we're talking there. It's not very many. Commercial land uses, no bicycle parking required for small parking lots. This is real important when you really just have a small parking lot. And we're talking about fewer than 10 spaces. There's really nowhere to take up another parking space for that, or it's the parking is just too much at a premium, and therefore there's no explicit requirement. For commercial land uses in general, we have one bike parking space required per 10 required parking spaces for the first 100 required parking spaces, and then thereafter 1 per 20 is required. So that would provide the required bicycle parking for commercial land uses. By way of reference, this table is in page 23 of the existing conditions report addendum to the Move HP plan. It does a little bit of a side-by-side with parking requirements as one of the pieces of information staff used. You'll find that these parking requirements in terms of multifamily tend to be more lenient than the one that we proposed. And you can see here you have also with commercial as well. They use a variety of methods to come up with their ratios. So sometimes this is not quite as easy to compare side by side. But just wanted to let you know that this was informed by this. There was also a column here that staff had researched with regard to bicycle parking design that I alluded to, well, not alluded to, but mentioned was one of the provisions added to the definition for long-term bicycle parking. And that was its location or proximity to the entrance of the building. And you'll see here that many of these communities have 50 feet and others have just general things like vestibule must be well lit and accessible and don't include a specific requirement that it be located near an entrance or such. By way of reference, we were proposing 100 feet to that entrance. Okay. Bicycle parking incentives. So much of the city is already built. We've talked a lot about new buildings and buildings, planned developments and such. So how do we incentivize the incorporation in existing space? We have 2 by right allowances to incentivize that. One, 8 long-term bike spaces can offset 1 minimum off-street parking space, okay? Like we talked about before, you don't need to apply for a modification as part of your plan development and such if you provided the requisite long-term parking for that space, 8 spaces. And that's 8 parking spaces for bicycles offsets 1 minimum off-street parking space for vehicles. Then we get into, okay, well, that's great, but what about you already have a place and you're not doing anything to your business, but you're like, boy, I'd really like to incorporate bike parking. Do I really need to come in for a variance to do this? The answer would be no with number 2. 1 existing vehicle parking space can be converted into 8 non-long-term bicycle parking spaces by right. So this helps small businesses and others in 2 ways. 1, if you have a small parking lot from the slide before, 10 or fewer than 10 spaces, you don't have a requirement. But let's say you want to put 1 in, we wouldn't make you come in for a variance to do so by that number 2 provision. But that's a by right option of the landowner business. So it's not a requirement, it just allows for it without making a regulatory hurdle have to be overcome. Okay, so pedestrian pathways. Another part of this amendment package includes how to and when to provide for pedestrian paths. So it does call for increasing from 3 feet to 5 feet the existing design requirement for parking facility sidewalks. So we already have an existing requirement of 3 feet. Proposal is 5 feet. And here you can see what that requirement is here. It's in order to ensure pedestrian safety and walkways of not less than 3, crossed out 5 feet in width, exclusive of vehicle overhang, are required to separate any driveway or parking area from the building. So the provision is the same, but the width of the required sidewalk is proposed to be increased. Why? It coincides with our sidewalk minimum widths elsewhere. So this is one area of code that the sidewalk width is 3 feet, but we require 5 feet everywhere else. So that's really the beginning and end of that reason why. Requirement for internal pedestrian pathways within large parking lots, and I stress within large parking lots. So we're talking about a parking lot of at least 150 off-street parking spaces. Must include internal pedestrian paths of at least 5 feet in width, connecting all buildings, off-street parking facilities, and bike parking on the property. I can show some slides of pictures of what that might look like later in the presentation. Okay, connections to trails and buffering. The proposal requires that commercial and multifamily planned developments provide connections to adjacent existing or planned trails. Planned developments must include pedestrian paths of at least 5 feet in width connecting to adjacent existing or proposed trails or paths. Planned developments must include buffering along the property lines adjacent to existing or proposed trail or path consisting of evergreen trees and shrubs as follows, and it provides the specifications there. Continuous hedge, minimum height of 3 feet along those trails and paths, and then interspersed there with some evergreen trees. That's the end of my presentation. I can show you some pictures of those internal parking lot paths if you'd like, Mayor, or would you like to see that?
Some people would, yes. I
Okay,
guess
I'll
we
do
will.
that right now then. I just wanted
There you
to
go.
understand how you'd like to. Okay, so here's a large parking lot, and I do stress here that the pictures shown here show a sidewalk that varies between 7 and 10 feet wide. We're not requiring that. It's 5 feet. And 6 and 9 foot wide pedestrian paths within the parking lot. We were talking about 5 feet in the proposal. And essentially, the goal here is to provide safe access to all rows of parking for large parking lots. People with families, kids, shopping carts, whatever it might be. As you can see here on the left, you have the shopping corral there, and there's a 6 to 9 foot wide in that area, more like a 9-ish wide pedestrian pathway. Here's a smaller one on the left that's 6, where you have cars intersecting it. And then you can see here how it is essentially connecting the rows of parking within a large parking lot, providing a clear, identifiable pathway for pedestrians with carts, with kids, with whatever they're carrying, or just merely walking to the store with nothing. And then there's another look at that different angle there. So those are the pictures I have for that, Mayor.
Great, thank you. Thank you so much. So first I want to acknowledge the good and ambitious work of the Transportation Advisory Group and the consideration of the PDC and obviously the comprehensive approach by the Move HP Group several years ago. Having been the council liaison to what was then the Transportation Commission, introducing complete streets, heaven help us, 16 years ago. So I understand where we've been trying to get to and the efforts behind all of this. To me, it's one question that I had, did we, and I'm not sure we have this data, do we know what the average age is in our multifamily housing? Is it mostly people over the age of 70?
Mayor, I can only report to you what I've heard anecdotally with regard to McGovern House at 760 Central Avenue. That was finished construction in 2017. It's about 70
Okay. That was
for
just
that
guess.
building. That's
Right.
what I heard.
Okay.
And that was a couple of years ago. That's what I heard.
And again, I love, the ambition and the aspiration and seeing your data, from Portland and Minneapolis and Chicago. But to me, this feels like an opportunity to educate before we legislate. I know that this is an amenity that several buildings, I've got adult kids, they want to have a place to store their bike, they want to be able to ride their bike to work. They live in the city of Chicago where there are well-established bike highways, essentially. To me, if I were breaking it down into the 4 parts that we talked about, so the requirements for bike parking for new commercial and multifamily developments, I'd like us to educate, I'd like us to see what we can do to get developers to get on board before we start having this as a requirement. Same with requirements related to parking reductions for bicycle parking. I'm open to discussing that more, and I appreciate that we're willing to look at sort of transit-oriented developments and say, here we are, maybe you don't need all of this parking for all of these cars. That I'm open to discuss. The requirement for internal parking lot pedestrian paths, I'm all in. I think for 150 or more spots, you've got the space and you need to have some sort of protections. I keep thinking about, being that mom with 4 kids in the Target parking lot, just praying that nobody takes off and nobody, runs us over. And then the 4th one, again, requirements for new commercial multifamily and planned developments to provide connections to adjacent existing or planned trails. Again, I'd like us to educate before we say this is a requirement. I think we just saw with the project that's coming before us this evening, if you're too draconian in terms of landscaping, then you're missing other benefits, such as in the case of the one on Central that we're talking about in a few minutes, the sight lines coming out. One of our goals is, again, to create more of an ability to achieve affordable housing. If we're giving up a big enough space to store bikes that we're missing a chance to house a few people, I'll go with housing the people every time. So I'd like to see this become more of a educate before we legislate, a public benefit option, or a priority as a public benefit. We're already hearing about how we're using parking for helping our restaurants, and people are upset that they're losing parking there. I just feel like, I know this is an aspiration of ours. I love that Evanston, by the way, has it decided by their design review committee versus just having a strict, this is what you need to follow. So those are my opinions. I know my council members have comments as well. We'll start with Councilmember Tapia.
Yeah, and the number of questions I have, it's really kind of a little bit heavy for this kind of forum, but I think it's indicative that I think I feel there's a bunch of unanswered questions or threads we got to pull on to really get comfortable. And I like how you put it, about educating versus legislating. So I won't be thorough in my questions, but directionally, I'm going to make the case that I think we need more time to work our way through it, and maybe a committee of the whole where we can really roll up our sleeves and kind of work our way through a bunch of questions. But directionally, the philosophy of Move HP and all this, I'm in favor of the direction, the philosophy, right? We want to be as walkable and as bikeable and as green as possible, right? And some of the specifics that are mentioned here are in line with that. So I don't have a argument or quibble toward the direction of this, but I am worried about unintended consequences that may complicate other things that are priorities, and the mayor already mentioned 2 or 3 examples, and I won't repeat those, but I'm kind of in that direction. But as for example, I think of a very bikeable city like Amsterdam, and we know why that works. There's a culture of biking everywhere, and the infrastructure makes sense. And then in the city of Chicago, there's all kinds of bike lanes everywhere that and we see people literally jumping on their bikes and commuting as part of their lifestyle. We're not there as a city now. Doesn't mean that culture can't change, and part of what keeps behavior from moving in a certain direction is that infrastructure is not there, so you have to create structures to incentivize certain behaviors. But the question for me is there enough of this behavior to warrant some aggressive or assertive set of access to bikes and all that when it may not be the demand. And case in point, I voted in favor of it, so we voted for the creation of a bike shelter at the Virginia train station with the idea that, that will make people want to bike there and they can protect their bikes and jump on the train and go. I love that. I'm sorry to say, but that shelter is empty pretty much every day, or if there's one bike. So, we applied our philosophy, we followed through, we put the infrastructure, and we have not seen the behavior, right? And that had its particular cost and use of land. So that's kind of sitting in front of me when I think about this, is like, do we have these requirements that are ambitious and congruent with a philosophy to be more green and more bikeable and more accessible, and yet do we run the risk of creating an infrastructure and putting demands on our developers and having some other forms of compromises that in the end, we don't really optimize and use the infrastructure that we've created. So I have a concern about overreach before we see the culture change. So related to that, I see that there's a equation for how many bike spaces or parking spaces per units. And I don't know if this is where you're going, Mayor, but when you asked about the average age, where I was thinking is, what are the demographics of the different buildings that, because certain buildings and multi-dwelling apartment buildings attract certain demographics. There might be higher income, lower income, they might be younger, they might be family, they might be older, they might be senior citizens. And that really lends itself to very different forms of bike uses. And I'm worried about a uniform rule that really doesn't take into account that actually it's a diversity of dwellings with different demographics that may have higher or lower demand for bikes. So that's an example of where I'm worried about a uniform rule. And then to have a system where, well, if that rule doesn't fit for them, let them come and appeal for a variance. And we have that system in place. But again, that creates more bureaucratic overhang, lawyer fees to make the case. Our staff has been burdened by managing the agenda, and they have to come, and we know all that thing. Obviously, we want an exceptions process, but can we proactively mitigate some of those exception requests by anticipating the things that we don't really want people asking variances for, because we had thought about this through and through. So on the bike side, I just have, half a dozen more questions, but you get the idea where I'm going, where I just feel you start pulling the thread, and there's just some dilemmas here that I don't feel resolved about. On the pedestrian access, I was walking with the mayor through Highland Park High School parking lot, and she goes, oh, here's an example of a good use of this, safety sidewalk. And it made a lot of sense, and you can feel it. And then the Target example is the opposite, right? I've had that same fear when Marisela was small, and I just see families just navigating that. So that, I get that. I worry about the small parking lots, and in the end, it'd be nice to have some safety things, but these small parking lots, we got to deal with the fact that they're small. And then the Michael's parking lot was mentioned as an example, so I kind of hung out there with those eyes. And there's a nice sidewalk against Terry's Toffees in that wall. And I said, okay, that's cool. But it's not the equivalent parallel sidewalk against the Michael's wall. And so we have safety for half of people. I mean, the safety thing is applied for half of the parking people, but not for the other. And I'm not arguing for another sidewalk. I'm just pointing out that we're trying to legislate or create infrastructure that force-fits something, and then we have an inconsistency. More safe on the south side, but less safe on the north side. And so that, I think that starts to speak to the fact that maybe this policy is a little bit too much regulation, where we started then have these inconsistencies don't make sense. And let's encourage people to walk safely or drive more slowly or whatever, and address safety in a different way when the parking situation is just not congruent to addressing this.
So you do recognize, though, that number 3 is only for parking lots with greater than 150 spaces? That's what's under consideration tonight.
Okay, fair enough. But then the Michael's parking lot was given to me as an example of what it could look like. So I kind of...
Yeah, but I just want to assure you
Okay.
that this consideration of this
Okay.
is 150 or more.
Okay, fair enough. All right, and then the final thing is connectivity to past and other parts of the city. I like that concept a lot, but again, I worry about legislation that might demand something that may be too expensive, too onerous for developers to implement. And again, we don't know where these buildings are going to be or what's going to be torn down and put up. Now, there's good examples, right? Like the passageway from 2nd Street to Green Bay through the Albion with a beautiful mural that they put up and the landscaping. That's a good example, right? Of they and the zoning and all that say, hey, let's have a way to cut through. There's places where we might have missed the opportunity to make it more beautiful, and maybe we still can. When you go from 2nd Street to 1st Street, there by Style Shack, you can get back there, but it's kind of not very attractive, and it's kind of, nobody knows there. And that's an opportunity maybe to take that concept and make it more beautiful and more attractive, right? So, but I like the concept. I think we could do more of that, both pedestrian-wise and as someone who cycles everywhere throughout Highland Park, I see places where we could create more connectivity. But as a cyclist, I recognize that I will have to go out of my way if I want to do it safely, and I'm okay with that. Because cycling is utilitarian for me, and I need to get to the shopping or to visit a friend or the city council or whatever. But I recognize that there's not going to be the most efficient way for me to get there, and that's okay. That's the beauty of biking. So I just want to make sure that connectivity is done, but without a sense of super connectivity or super efficient connectivity. Connectivity can be a little bit working your way out of the way, and that's part of the art and the recreational and the beauty of biking is that you do the scenic route. If you want the direct route, you drive. So anyway, these are some of my reactions. There's more, but for now, I think you get the idea.
Great, thank you. Councilmember Bloomberg.
Thank you. I'm going to vote in favor of this. I want to first return to thanking the two commissions who spent a lot of time on this and move Highland Park. I am not going to substitute my anecdotal observations or experience for the detailed, lengthy consideration that these commissions put into these recommendations. Lengthy considerations that included listening to each other and concerns that the commissions had regarding some of the things that have thus far been raised this evening have been addressed. I think this is a modest plan. I think we have to start somewhere. Cycling is an important element of modern life. Chicago didn't develop bike lanes overnight, and if they had spent a lot of time being concerned with one or another individual concerns, they wouldn't have the extraordinary biking that is available in Chicago. Evanston wouldn't have what they have. So while I appreciate the idea of educating before legislating, I feel we're there. I think that's a legitimate, I've agreed with you in many similar situations, Mayor. I feel we're there. There's enough knowledge about biking and the connectivity that it provides that we should start requiring these things, essentially in planned unit developments. Planned unit developments are the commercial and residential developments that are largely all that is affected if we were to pass this legislation, which means that the request for a variance or some sort of reduction in the impact isn't an additional expense or burden on developers or on city staff. It's part of the normal process of coming before the Plan Commission or other commissions with a planned unit development. That's the entire purpose of a planned unit development, is to make sure that it works well, that it benefits the community in respects beyond just the underlying zoning. So the idea that this is going to become expensive or burdensome for developers, in my opinion, is a canard. It's the same as when we change our lighting code to our dark skies code. It's the same as any other change that we make when we require developments to start modernizing and meeting the things that we feel are necessary for our residents to continue to enjoy living in Highland Park and the quiet enjoyment of their own property. The buffers that you talk about that are necessary under this code are to assure that both the residents in a development that has pedestrian lanes and access to biking, that it doesn't interfere with the enjoyment of the residential property itself or the surrounding properties. And that's consistent with the kind of buffering that we require of any PUD that's built next to other properties. So I'm very comfortable with this. I think it is not aggressive. In fact, it allows a lot of latitude and has very minimal and sometimes no impact on smaller developments that would potentially be more affected by a change like this. So I'm very comfortable with what is being suggested by this.
Thank you. Councilmember Ross?
I want to say that I deeply appreciate the Transportation Advisory Group, Move HP, and the commissioners of the PDC. I know they gave a lot of time to the discussion of this agenda item, the issues. And I respectfully disagree with my colleague. I have reservations about voting on it tonight, but I do want to say very clearly, in no way is it a commentary on the work of the advisory groups and our Plan and Design Commission. Again, I value their time and ideas, and I do feel that we can find a balance between connectivity and safety and zoning that doesn't possibly deter people who want to build from, considering Highland Park. And I really loved the way the mayor put it, to educate before we legislate. I personally need more time to consider this. I do want to say, as with many agenda items, and understandably so, we only learned of this when it was posted a few days ago. I also don't feel that the landscape provision is as well figured out as I'd like it to be. If the landscape the buffer is by moving cars, the ice melt could kill it. The provision for evergreens would die on a road from the salt. And what does that look like? There would have to be substantial landscaping, and it'd have to be very well considered from that viewpoint. And I'm trying to see if I've been typing this as everyone's spoken. That's really it. I think these are good ideas. And again, I really, really appreciate the support organizations that advise us. I would like more time for this to be considered in another meeting. I'd like more time to consider this.
Thank you. One question I have to those who are asking for more time: what's going to change? Like, if you wait 2 weeks, 4 weeks, 6 weeks, and we come back, is anything going to change, or are you just choosing not to vote no? Not to be too blunt, but I'm going to let you mull that one over.
Something else, I guess if it's not unreasonable to ask, I'd like to see, more of and maybe it's already offered, available, and I'm forgetting it, more of a plan of where, we're missing, connectivity, and I guess more visuals would help me. But yeah, I do feel that more time would help me. There are parts that I probably, could support. I know that storage for bikes is an issue for many cyclists, and that it's a growing issue. I'm just not ready.
Okay, thank you. Councilmember Bruckman?
Thank you. I want to begin by expressing my sincere gratitude to the members of the Plan and Design Commission, Transportation Advisory Group, and city staff for the dedicated work on this proposed ordinance. Their time, effort, and thoughtful deliberation, especially during meetings on September 25th, November 5th, and December 17th of 2024, are greatly appreciated. It's important to recognize that these groups of individuals have invested a considerable amount of time in the analysis and discussion of this ordinance and have unanimously recommended it for approval. This ordinance represents one step in implementing the Move HP plan, which was adopted in 2020. To me, it's fundamentally about public safety, connectivity, convenience for our residents, and acting as a conduit for patrons of our businesses. It encourages access to our commercial districts and promoting inclusivity for future residents of developments near current or planned pedestrian and bicycle trails. Some concerns raised this evening don't seem to oppose the core benefits of the ordinance, but rather reflects the interest of certain developers and other issues. These concerns have not been supported by specifics, no details on which developers are affected or how their concerns have been measured to demonstrate potential harm. While I don't believe these viewpoints should be dismissed outright, they should be balanced against the broader goals of this ordinance. TAG, PDC, and city staff have already considered the implications for commercial and multifamily development, and they still chose to unanimously support this ordinance. We would be doing a disservice to our community if we overlook the thoughtful, thorough, and unanimous recommendations of TAG, PDC, and city staff. I know that many of them are tuned in this evening, and I want to acknowledge and thank all of them for all their contributions. Additionally, it's worth noting that if a development adjacent to a trail were to face legitimate feasibility issues or undue burdens in complying with this ordinance, there's a clear path forward. The developer can present their case to PDC and seek an exemption. This built-in flexibility should ease concerns about unknown or unforeseen scenarios. At the end of the day, our priorities must remain focused on enhancing public safety, strengthening community connectivity, and supporting both residents and local businesses. That's exactly what this ordinance aims to do, which is why I fully support its approval. To those developers who may have concerns, I hear you, and those concerns, if those concerns materialize into concrete challenges, there'll be a fair process to review and resolve them. But today we must move forward in the best interest of our community. Thank you again to everyone involved in the research, evaluation, recommendation of this ordinance.
Great, thank you. Councilmember Center.
Thank you. I too want to thank all members of the community, PDC, TAG, and the city staff for the hard work that was put into this. I think Councilmember Blumberg made some comments around trusting and relying upon the experts and discussions that were had relative to some of those proposals, and I can't disagree with that. I think as it relates to many of the sort of tactics of ratios and things of that nature, they clearly did their homework and had a lot of discussion around that. But overall, I have several concerns in moving forward with this vote. I agree largely with the sentiments shared by the mayor, by Councilmember Tapia, by Councilmember Ross, and by Councilmember Litterer offline, who isn't here today. The global nature of what's being proposed, to me, is what's challenging. As Councilmember Tapia pointed out, not every building is created equal. The residents are different, the makeup, the way that they operate, the way that they live, the way that they work. And so to create global zoning regulations that require all buildings and all projects to be created equal might not be the right approach in this way. I think that extends sort of across the different items that we're considering with respect to both parking or all parking, connectivity, and pedestrian safety, which, by the way, is of the utmost importance. Pedestrian safety, biker safety, and I'm fully supportive of embracing a connected community that enables us to get out of our vehicles and walk and enjoy all the amenities of our beautiful community. So I'm not at all trying to say that that is not a priority for mine. It is, but I think it needs to be done more globally, as the mayor sort of pointed out earlier in her remarks. I do want to point out sort of one specific thing, and I won't go through the specific questions that I have for the same reason that Councilmember Tapia won't. It is a little bit more kind of in the weeds and details and probably not best for this forum. Given it just an example of sort of my comment around sort of this global nature, we saw several pictures of what were grocery parking lots. You talked about Target. Great use cases for what we're talking about of having safe places to walk, but not all parking lots need that necessarily, depending on what the use of those parking lots are. Understanding as well that there's some size considerations. So I threw a lot out there. I think the council members threw a lot out there. But for me, ensuring that we have some of these questions answered, that we do get feedback from the developer community. It's not about catering to them. It's about ensuring that we're not restricting future economic growth and development in this community and not creating unintended policies that will result in onerous and restrictive demands on them, and that will potentially drive them out of the community. That's what we're trying to avoid. So I'll stop there, but I would like us to learn more, as you pointed out, Mayor, before we are able to move forward with this.
Okay, thank you. So I do want to survey each of you on these 4 recommendations, because I sense that in some of them, we do have a majority that supports. I'm loath to put this off. I think you can put off decisions ad nauseum and never get to any kind of resolution. I hear what you're saying. I think we are pretty clear in terms of who's going which way. So I do want to continue this conversation.
Can I add one thing, Mayor?
I'm sorry?
Can I add one thing?
Sure.
To answer your question that you asked of Councilmember Ross, for me personally, in terms of delay versus no, I think it's about trying to get to yes to support the great work that is being done, but it's trying to get to yes in a way that also considers some of the other concerns that have been brought up.
I'm confident we can get there. So thank you. Appreciate that. Okay. Number 1 is requirements for bike parking for new commercial and multifamily developments. To me, this was a major sticking point, and I just am curious to know, my sense from you, Councilmember Bruckman, is that you're okay?
Yes.
Okay, so I'm going to keep track, if that's okay, just to kind of make sure where we are. Councilmember Tapia, you are a no on
Correct.
the, okay,
At this moment with the unanswered questions.
okay. Councilmember Bloomberg, you're a yes?
Yes. And if I may briefly add, that it does not treat all buildings and developments the same.
Correct.
There are very clear gradations based on size and need for developments.
Right.
And the other part of that, in terms of the general process, is that all zoning codes necessarily speak in generalities, but also this code, as our code often does, provides for different sizes and circumstances and clear paths towards relief when it's needed.
Great,
Thank you for the second bite of the apple.
You bet. Thank you. Councilmember Ross on number 1 regarding bike parking within 100 feet of the principal entrance and so many square feet per bike per unit.
I'm honestly not ready to vote on any of these pieces, and I do want to take the opportunity to say that, since, the question of, concern for safety was raised I think everyone in this room cares deeply about public safety.
Absolutely.
And I don't think that should be questioned regardless of how you vote on this.
Absolutely.
And I could, as Councilmember Center said, put it well, at least for me, I could get to yes on some of these pieces. I just need more time, and I'd say that for all of these pieces, I need more time to consider the numbers, the square footage, et cetera.
Gotcha. Okay. And Councilmember Center, in terms of the bike parking for new commercial and multifamily developments, if you had to choose at this point in time, where would you land?
I would choose no at this point in time.
Okay. And the next one, simplifying the requirements related to parking reductions for bicycle parking. So if you could put that up again, because I think that provides, in my understanding, and correct me if I'm wrong, flexibility by the developer to choose to say, I am going to offset some of the parking requirements by providing bicycle parking.
That is correct.
It's not a strict yes or no from us to them. It's by design, it's by their choice.
Yes.
And so to that end, I'm okay with a yes on that because we're not decreeing this is what you have to do. It gives them more flexibility, frankly. So now I'm going to go down the line again. Councilmember Bruckman.
I'm a yes.
You're a yes. Councilmember Tapia. Yes. You're a yes. Councilmember Bloomberg.
I'm a yes.
I'm a yes. Now having that clarification, you need more time.
Well, as
okay?
the way you phrased it, yeah, I think
You're a
that
yes.
is
Okay.
a reasonable.
Councilmember Center?
Yes.
You're a yes. Okay. So number 2, I think we could take action on. Number 3, requirement for internal parking lot pedestrian paths. Again, clarifying, This is strictly for parking lots of 150 or more off-street parking spaces. The only question is expanding the width. We already have this requirement in place.
The 3-foot width is already a requirement.
Right.
That was proposed to go to 5. The second part here is only for those large parking lots, 150 or more spaces.
Right. Councilmember
So
Tapia.
two
Yeah,
different
and I
things.
have an ADA question or accessibility question. The 5 feet is also related to accessibility, right? Like for
Yes.
wheelchair
Yes.
access, right?
So basically, we're now getting within
Yeah, okay.
compliance.
So,
Okay.
all right, I got it.
All right, so Councilmember Bruckman.
Need 4 for that.
Yes. Councilmember Tapia.
Yes.
Bloomberg.
Yes.
Rodering is a yes. Ross? It's already a requirement.
Yeah, it's already a
We're just getting
requirement,
ourselves
and it's
within
ADA.
compliance.
Yeah. Okay, I'm backtracking here.
All good. We're not going to
Okay.
hold you accountable for any of this, okay? Other than your vote. Councilmember Center.
It is currently
A lot.
for all new developments as well?
150 or more is the new added piece, so it's only for extremely large parking lots. It's not for Michael's parking lot.
The second part is new.
The second part is new. So this is literally putting in relief. Currently, we have it for all parking lots. This will give relief and have it only be for large parking lots. We love safety, no question.
I'm just,
Madam
I'm
Mayor,
seeing Joel.
I just want to clarify. So there's two parts to this. The first one, we already have a 3-foot requirement. The proposal is to go to 5, to allow for better movement along those sidewalks for parking facilities that,
Second one's new.
as you can see there, the quote, the sidewalks in order to ensure pedestrian safety, not less than 3 feet, suggestion 5 feet in width, inclusive of vehicle overhang, are required to separate any driveway parking area from a building.
And those are
Okay, so
side-
that's current, not 5 feet, it's currently at 3 feet.
Sidewalks that abut the parking lot or
Right.
internally inside the parking lot?
No, that's
Within.
abutting the building, that's to
Right,
separate
so
a
the-
driveway from a parking area from a building.
The one that is on the south side of Michael's that Councilmember Tapia pointed out, for example. I get that that's not 150 spaces, but just so I can visualize.
No, but this pertains to, this doesn't have to, the first one has to do with an existing requirement, doesn't have to do with the 150 spaces.
So that's correct, like Michael's would be correct.
Yeah.
Correct.
It's an
That's right.
existing parking lot,
Right.
less than 150, it's 3 feet, it would
It's
have to
that
be
sidewalk
5.
that's right
Correct.
next to the parking lot.
Correct.
That would have to become 5, which
Correct.
becomes ADA compliant.
Right.
Okay.
So then the
That
new
part I-
part
yes.
is the internal pedestrian paths, those pictures that you saw, those internal pedestrian paths.
For basically Target and the grocery store.
Right, for the very large parking lots.
Do we have, what parking lots do we currently have?
We don't have any requirement for this right now.
No. How many parking lots do we have that are 150 or
Thank you,
more?
Mayor.
Like
We didn't-
Target,
we did not- we
Sunset,
did not.
Jewel.
If you look at redevelopment of the
1201
former Toys R
Park
Us
Avenue
site,
West.
Right.
This would qualify.
Which
But
would be
these are
maybe
just these
experiential space
big-
where there's families, things like that, right?
Right.
Like, that's kind of the point. Okay,
So right now, if
You're a
I,
yes?
I'm okay, if that's, with that sort of framework.
Okay, so that's number 3. So number 4 is requirements for new commercial multifamily and planned developments to provide connections to adjacent, existing, and/or planned trails.
Can
I'm
you
a-
switch the slide?
Yeah, thanks, Joel.
Sure.
Councilmember Bruckman.
I'm a yes on this one.
Yeah, Councilmember Tapia.
I'm a no because I want to explore this further. I'm in favor of the concept, but not in
You want
favor.
it to be an option that a developer brings into this conversation versus a requirement that everybody has to meet these explicit landscaping and connection needs. Okay. Councilmember Bloomberg, you're a yes?
I'm a yes.
Rodering remains a no. Councilmember Ross?
No, not yet.
Oh, okay. And Councilmember Center?
I'm a no for the reasons you just described with Councilmember Tapia.
Okay. So at that, Corporation Council, can I seek a motion on item 6, specifically outlining 2 and 3? Or how should we proceed? Do you want us to talk about all 4 and have the no's and the yeses be specific to the pieces within it? How would you like us to proceed to be transparent and clear about what our vote is?
Well, I've been keeping pretty good track of which ones are sufficient, which ones are not. I think the way you can phrase this motion is approval of the amendatory ordinance consistent with the discussion, with the city council's discussion.
Okay.
Subject to final corporation council review.
Correct.
I'm going to take a crack at it.
Go for it.
I move to approve
Item 6.
item 6, specifically as to the bike parking incentives, the pedestrian walkway changes, which include increasing the size of abutting sidewalks and requiring internal sidewalks for parking lots in excess of a certain size described in the ordinance. And I think that was all that everybody has agreed upon.
Do we have a motion? Do we have a second?
I move all that.
You're the second.
Oh, yeah, I'm the
You
second.
are the
I second
second.
what you just moved.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any further discussion?
Mayor, I
Yeah.
just have one clarification. So for the other aspects, is there an interest in having us do education, as you indicated initially, or just put everything to bed?
I would suggest a separate motion.
Why don't we approve what
Okay.
we're approving, and then we'll get around to what we want to do with 1 and 4,
Okay.
if that makes sense. Any comments from the public? Hearing none, will the clerk call the vote?
Councilmember Center,
Aye.
Councilmember Breckman,
Aye.
Councilmember Ross,
Aye.
Councilmember Tapia,
Aye.
Councilmember Bloomberg,
Aye.
Mayor Rodering.
Aye, 6 ayes, no nays. The motion is approved. Now concerning the requirement for bike parking for new commercial and multifamily developments and the requirements for new commercial, multifamily, and planned developments to provide connections to adjacent existing and/or planned trails. I actually am seeking a motion to recommend to developers who are bringing proposals forward to work in some sort of effort to address the concerns raised by the transportation advisory group and the Plan and Design Commission as referenced in today's discussion. So in other words, recommending that they better understand what the goals are, but this is not a statutory requirement in the city of Highland Park. Is that a fair representation by the majority, do you think? Yes, Joel?
Just a point
Oh,
of
sorry, Director
clarification.
Fontaine.
Would you like that to be in the public benefit list in some fashion or form?
I know I would.
I just wanted to make mention of
We can take
that.
another survey up here. Councilmember Bloomberg?
So I think it should be included as part of the list of public benefits when that becomes necessary. I think also, as we have done in the past, for instance, with other proposed development changes that were not successful, but we wanted to try to include and educate developers, we included within our zoning regulations that those goals be suggested to developers, but not requirements, as part of the application process. But I would like the motion not to stop at that. I would like the motion to continue the hearing on these matters to either a date certain or not to a date certain for further discussion and education by the council, because I feel that there are potentially a majority of council members that might vote on this favorably if they either knew more about it or if it were amended somewhat. But the general concepts are of interest to, I think, a majority of the council. So I don't want to simply stop at educational components.
So it sounds, I mean, you're welcome to make a motion to
Okay.
recommend that we continue items.
I'd like to make two motions.
Before
two for the-
we continue, I just want to kind of weigh in on where we stand right now. The ordinance with the portions of the amendatory ordinance has been approved, so far as the council has been able to come together and agree. The outstanding components are kind of on hold because the council wants to provide direction to staff that there is an educational component for developers. I don't necessarily think that a motion is needed in order to provide direction to staff. I think that the item, which was this ordinance, was approved kind of as revised. The remaining parts of it have to be worked out and then have to come back to the council at a later time in a different form, because
Makes
it's going to be a
sense.
completely
Because it's already
different.
been, yeah.
Right.
So I think we kind of need to bifurcate this to some extent. One is, in the moment, have staff explain to proposals, here's what we're looking at, we're exploring this, we haven't made a clear conclusion on it. At some point, at a date uncertain, I would say, given what else we're dealing with, we should circle back and have a more clear conversation, is what I'm hearing from people. They're appreciative and acknowledging the work that went into 1 and 4. And so rather than just discard them and say, best of luck in your endeavors, let's have that fulsome conversation about what it was about these 2 components that people still felt we needed to pursue. And then after that, we can say, do we want this to come back or do we not want this to come back? But you'll at least have that in-depth opportunity to get more information.
So how would that information, first of all, I support that. I support what you were describing, and I support how you're describing it. How would that come back?
It would be a
to
committee
us?
of the whole conversation.
Committee of the whole, okay.
And
I
so
mean,
we
I
would have
completely
that
support that, and I
opportunity
am
to-
open. I mean, yeah.
Okay, Councilmember Bloomberg and then Tapia.
So, listening to Corporation Counsel, I'm reminded that that's what we've done in the past when certain aspects of a proposed ordinance don't pass but have favorable commentary by the council. We don't have to pass a motion to make a recommendation to staff to incorporate that in the application process, for instance. But I would like to make a motion specifically to return the remaining items for council consideration in the future, either at a committee of the whole or on the city council on a future agenda. I don't want to lose the opportunity, because I'm sensing that a majority of the council would ultimately approve some version of the remaining items. Do I need to do a motion to continue the remainder of relief to a future date uncertain?
I don't think it's necessary, just because it might not be continued before this body. For instance, it might be continued in your form as a committee of the whole. And so at some point, it will appear again before you. A motion is not necessary in order to add extra, I guess, motivation or muscle. In my opinion, the direction is clear to staff. This is something that is very close, and we would like to see it again. And so if you're asking me, is it necessary? I do not believe it's necessary.
I get that. It's not that I'm trying to provide additional muscle. I'm trying to keep it tracking. I understand it's going to have to go before the committee of the whole before it comes back here, but I would like to continue it on a future agenda here so that we have the committee of the whole meeting and we eventually come back and vote on this. I don't want to lose this into the ether, which sometimes unintentionally happens.
So I'm going to ask that we put this into the capable hands of our city manager and have it come back as a committee of the whole item, and that will be your recollection of, oh, that's right. And through that conversation, then you'll know, is it worth putting on an agenda or not? If you don't have a majority that after that conversation is like, oh, yep, missed opportunity, let's go do that, then I think that's it.
I get that, but I feel like there's probably a majority here, except as to some details.
I'm not sure I agree with you.
Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and make the motion anyway. And
That's okay.
we'll see if it gets seconded and voted on.
That's okay, that sounds good. Go
I move to continue consideration of the remaining items of this bill at a date in the future uncertain.
We have a motion, do we have a second? Fails due to lack of a second.
That's the answer.
Worthy try, okay, but thank you. But we will talk still at committee of the whole.
Of course.
Yeah,
I hear you
for
loud
sure.
and clear.
Councilmember Tapia.
Yeah, and This is not only about legislating and also the process, but I think we also are having a good discussion about culture and philosophy and intention. And I think the intention here is connectivity, walkability, bikeability, right, all those things. I think we've brought up some more tactical issues and unintended consequences issues that we feel need to be addressed to make sure we legislate in the best possible way. And process-wise, by going to committee of the whole with whatever staff brings to us, and I would also recommend, and I think it was suggested here already, that we invite the developer community to weigh in so we can hear what the unintended possible consequences might be to them and hear from them. And many of these developers are members of the community or have invested a lot in this community and invest in this community not only because of their own commercial interests, but because of the values and ethos and culture of the city. And I think if we have more of a stakeholder balancing conversation about what will work for our bikers and our residents and our safety, and also for the developers who are investing in here, I think that'll be a more holistic conversation. And therefore, that conversation is likely to shift and change the actual wording of these two things that are in front of us. So we cannot anticipate how that's going to change. So I like the idea, committee of the whole, see what comes out of it. But personally, I feel committed to seeing this through. I don't want to see it die in the vine. I just want it to be legislated as best as possible.
Okay. Councilmember Ross?
I did want to tell my colleague, Councilmember Bloomberg, we will not lose track of this. We'll discuss it in committee of the whole. I hope that there'll be a future, that this work will not be in vain. I honestly, I think we're all committed to the same things ultimately. And I guess I also want to mention that this may not be at all the right time to mention this. I don't know, maybe it is, that fully, I think about 5 times in the last 2 weeks, I've seen 8-year-old kids whizzing by on motorized bicycles at 30 miles an hour. And
So that is not on the agenda?
It's not on the agenda.
But it is going to be considered in June?
It is, okay. I mean, talk about safety. They look like bikes, but they're, fully motorized and they're going faster than cars. And that's something I like to be cognizant of. But I do feel that a fuller discussion would be incredibly helpful. And I'm not ruling out being able to get to a place. I do believe we can get to a place that we're all comfortable with. That's what I believe.
Thank you. Councilmember Brockman?
So to the point that was just mentioned, I actually would like to second Councilmember Bloomberg's request now, since I do think we will get to a yes, and everyone wants to see this come back to get voted on, if that's all right.
Yep, that's fine.
Okay.
So we have a motion, we have a second. And the question is, restate it.
The motion is to set for a future date uncertain further consideration of the unpassed portions of the bill, of the proposal.
Okay, well, the clerk.
And before we call the roll, just want to confirm that that is the understanding of the seconder.
Yes,
the
it
understanding of
is.
the seconder?
Yes.
Okay. Will the clerk please call the vote?
Councilmember Center?
Abstain. I don't even know how to vote for that. Abstain.
Okay.
Councilmember Ruckman?
Aye.
Councilmember Ross?
Since it's unnamed the dates, I will say yes to that.
Councilmember Tapia?
No.
Councilmember Bloomberg?
Aye.
Mayor Rotering?
No, so with a vote of 3 to 2 to 1, it will come back at a date uncertain before the city council. Great.
Okay.
And before then, we will have a great conversation at the committee of the whole. This could be like a lesson in Robert's rules. Okay, thank you very much, everybody, for that. I am seeking a motion to postpone item 8 to a date uncertain.
The next meeting.
Next meeting? Okay.
Yes.
Seeking a motion to postpone item 8 to the next meeting.
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Any discussion? Will the clerk please call the vote?
Councilmember Center?
What, to delay this?
To postpone it to the
Aye.
next meeting.
Councilmember Brockman?
Aye.
Councilmember Ross?
Aye.
Councilmember Tapia?
Aye.
Councilmember Bloomberg?
Aye.
Mayor Rotering?
Aye, 6 ayes, no nays. Item 8 will be brought back at our next meeting. Item 10 is a resolution approving a preliminary development plan and preliminary inclusionary housing plan. We're not done yet. At 734 Central. Do we need another presentation? You just saw this at the last meeting, although we did have a handful of questions. Applicant, any desire to chat?
So we're here for questions, or we had an extensive conversation. Again, we've had 3 hearings at the PDC, unanimous from the PDC. We had the vote last time to draft the ordinance. I know there was questions from Councilwoman Ross with regard to development. The architect's here to address them. We already submitted a letter in response also.
And Mayor, that was included in the staff report,
Yes.
the Q&A from the last one.
Right. Is there a need for further discussion, or is there a motion on this item?
I would motion the vote.
Move to
Vote on it.
Move to approve?
Move to approve.
Thank you. Is there a second?
Second.
Okay. Any further discussion on item 10? Councilmember Bloomberg.
First of all, thank you for the bicycle space. For the reasons that I expressed last time, I am going to vote against it despite what I said to you earlier in the evening. I want to clarify that I understand that it essentially meets with the underlying zoning. And this is not in any way a criticism of your efforts or your architecture or the work that you've done to get to this point. It is my opinion, because it's a PUD, that it is too big for the location that it is in, and I'm going to vote against it for that reason. I don't think it meets the PUD standards, although I think it meets the underlying zoning.
Okay, thank you. Any other comments or questions? Any from the public? Okay, we have a motion.
I'm
Yes,
going
Councilmember
to say,
Ross?
I want to say that I appreciate Councilmember Bloomberg's concerns about bulk, and I appreciate that, the courage in talking about it. But I, feel that this has been, it has gone through, PDC fairly extensively, and it got supported to this point. I am supporting it, but I did want to make that comment for the record. Thank you. I appreciate it.
Thank you. Any other comments from the group? Hearing none, will the clerk call the vote?
Councilmember Center?
Aye.
Councilmember Brockman?
Aye.
Councilmember Ross?
Aye.
Councilmember Tapia?
Aye.
Councilmember Bloomberg?
No.
Mayor Rotering?
Aye, 5 ayes, 1 nay. Item 10 is approved. Thank you. We have no closed session, so I'm seeking a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second?
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Thank you.